So, hey everyone, I'm Eduardo Speroni, I'm from Brazil. I'm with Valor Software today to talk to you about understanding how NativeScript works, plus how to add your own flavor to it. So, NativeScript allows you to build applications by calling native APIs directly from JavaScript. So, you might be wondering, okay, but how? So, starting from the bottom, this is how basically how NativeScript works. So, we're starting with the native application that you're building, right? So, the application itself is defined as the host platform, right? So the host platform sees your app as this kind of application, and the application must be defined within the constraints that the platform that you're using provides you. So basically it has to be like in Java, Kotlin, Objective-C, Swift. So it has these constraints, and it allows you also to, it gives you APIs to communicate with all the services that are in the service system. So you can have like background services on Android. You can have as well like background fetch or messaging on iOS. There are native objects that you have to handle and events that you pretty much have to handle all the way, right? So to use this, so to be able to talk with the native application, we have the Platform Runtime. What's the Platform Runtime? So the Platform Runtime is V8, and basically have the power of V8, which is the engine that's backing Node, that's backing a lot of modern browsers. It's backing Dino as well. So it powers JavaScript not only on the web, but on many other platforms. So the runtime is it. On iOS, for example, you have a main function where you have to usually call UI application main, or on Android, you have your application where we initialize the runtime. We initialize the runtime and tell it to run the JavaScript code that it needs to run. So you might be wondering, that's it? Yes, that's it. Well, kinda. There are a lot of stuff going underneath that you can look around a bit. Nathan did a talk just before on the community theater about it, but there are a couple of things that make this magic work, but it is pretty sound technology, and you're free to like search on our like repos and stuff. It's pretty interesting things. So let's go to what we are here to talk about, JavaScript. So let's do an example. So here we have this simulator that doesn't want to stay on the right side of the screen. So let's see what a basic example of what you can do in NativeScript. You can see here that I just have like some wall of text, but I'm calling UI application main on iOS, and I'm passing my own delegate. So this delegate right here is just a delegate that when the application did finish launching, I do some console logging, I create my window, I create my root view, I create a label, I show up this root view, and that's it. So that's how you usually create the application on Objective-C, for example, but I'm doing this straight from JavaScript. So if I go back to my main file, so right now my main file is empty. If I open this application right here, it just closes because I didn't call your application main, so it's just like a main file that returns 0, and that's it. So I can go in here and then uncomment this. It's going to build. And now I have my UI that I just built up straight from JavaScript. So there is no Objective-C or Swift going on here. So let's say I want to add more things to it. I want to add some kind of Lottie view to like do some animations. So what I did, I just added like a pod file, just as I would do with iOS development. I just got Lottie iOS, right? And with Lottie iOS, NativeScript generated for me this declaration file, which has all the APIs that NativeScript can see. So it can see the lot animation view, which is the view that shows the Lottie animation. So what we have here is just the same code. I collapsed a few things, but I added this Lottie view, right? And I got it from this JS logo that is just a require from a JSON. So this is all like JavaScript, pure JavaScript. The JSON that I get is like a JavaScript object. It gets automatically translated by the runtime from a JSON to an NS dictionary. And then we have here, for example, so let's go back to our main. And let's now switch to the Lottie. And it just shows up. And I even added like a play button right here, where I can pretty much spam this and the animation keeps playing. And this play button is actually, so as you can see here, I created a Lottie, I press play, right? And then I created this play button. When you click, this is the action handler, it stops and plays the animation. So that's it. So this is basically just pure JavaScript with pure Objective-C, so no NativeScript core, so no other abstractions on top of that, right? So what we have here is our native application, and that lives outside of our context. And you have UI, NativeScript UI-based, background service, native events. NativeScript UI-based are like UI elements that we provide for the user so that they can use. They are actual native views that you can use even without NativeScript. And then you have the runtime. So everything that you want to run in JavaScript has to pass through the runtime. From the runtime, you have NativeScript core, which are just common APIs between platforms. So in this example, remember how I did UI application main before. I just import application, call application.run. This will call UI application main for me on iOS, and on Android, it's going to set up all the activity callbacks that it needs to show up your UI when your app becomes active. So I also like using Angular. So Angular lives, it's not dependent on NativeScript core at all, but we have NativeScript Angular, which is responsible for integrating Angular with NativeScript core. So that's what we usually call our flavors, right? You can have Angular, you can have React, you can have Svelte, you can have Vue. So there are many other frameworks and many other flavors which NativeScript comes from. And you have our main TS. We are here, by the way. So here's your user code. So in essence, when you're developing an NativeScript app, it's going to run your main.ts. You're going to set up your callbacks, and after that, everything. So imagine if background services. There's a background service, a background event that's going on. It's going to have to go through the native application to the runtime until your main.ts. So that's always the flow, and the runtime always initializes the first thing that's initialized in your app. And NativeScript core allows you to pretty much handle these events pretty much seamlessly. So you're going to put your main.ts application on. So launch, exit, suspend, display, background, foreground, resume, low memory. So many events, and there are many other events that are not directly from the application that you can bind. But essentially, you using NativeScript core, you can focus on what you need to be done, what you need to do when those events fire, and not exactly how they're being fired. So in essence, NativeScript allows you to build applications by calling native APIs directly from JavaScript. And now you know how. But the title said, understanding how NativeScript works, plus how to add your own flavor to it. So, you know what's great about Angular, React, Vue, Svelte, and most other JS JavaScript UI frameworks? They are not limited to the browser or the DOM. You're actually encouraged many times to use them on the server side to render. So they are thought already without the need for the DOM or the need for a browser to run on. So you can always hook into their internals to create your own way of rendering their UI, right? So on NativeScript core, we have a few helpers like stack layout, which is just like a view that's going to stack all your views inside. You have label to show text. So you can see here, I'm creating like a hello world example that's going to show as my root view. So I'm hooking into the launch event, and I'm creating my root view, which is a stack layout with like hello world written in, and I'm passing it as the args.root. So I'm passing it to NativeScript that this is going to be my root NativeScript view. With this, NativeScript will show this UI. That's the thing that it usually it takes care for you, right? So to write your own flavor, all you need to do is like you create your NativeScript, your flavor, right? You get the application, you get how to bootstrap your flavor, you create your own renderer for it, so you tell the flavor that you want. So for Angular, for example, we have like the NativeScript renderer for Angular, we just translate. So if you get a grid layout, if you get the stack layout on the HTML file, the template file for Angular, you need to create this stack layout here to put up on the screen. And then we just do the same launch event. We get the renderer, we pass it through the bootstrap for our chosen framework or chosen flavor, and we just get the root view that that flavor generates, and we set it as root, and that's pretty much it. That's the code you're going to see if you look at NativeScript Angular. It's pretty similar to this. It's a bit more, it's always like the things that you probably want to add more things like HMR so that it's like improved developer experience, but this is pretty much like the core of it. And for the user, you can just import run my flavor app, the function that we just created, and they pass the entry point, and they are using NativeScript, and they are creating native apps with your own flavor, and they don't even know what's going on, essentially. They don't need the knowledge of NativeScript and what's going on underneath. That's pretty much it. I'm Eduardo Speroni with the NativeScript TSC as well. Those are like my socials, and thank you as well for Valor Software as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.